This is the TechStart podcast. Tech professionals, remote workers, and entrepreneurs who are leaving the rat race and starting a new life in Southern Colorado.
Welcome to the show. We're excited today to have Brad Rowland on the show today. Welcome, Brad.
Thanks. Hi, Matthias. Hi, Ash.
Hey
and
there.
Also co-host Ash. So glad to have all of us together here. And I wanted to spend some time talking about the journey that brought us here. And Brad, it wasn't that long ago when this whole idea of rural tech was just kind of a glimmer of hope. Do you want to talk briefly about what that first glimmer of hope looked like, and maybe briefly fill us in a little bit about the journey from there to here?
Yeah, thanks, Matthias. So I've been out in Colorado for about 5 years, left San Jose and moved out not just to Colorado, but to rural Colorado, and was thinking that I would not be able to continue my tech career out here since we're in a small town of 15,000 in a county of 45,000 with no tech companies. And you guys know the story, but right after I got here, got contacted by some friends out of state to start another startup, which we did. I ran marketing from here, and after 5 years, we sold that to a very large software company based in Seattle. So for me, the first glimmer of hope was that opportunity that came up, and it really helped me start to look at rural Colorado in a different way, that the software industry's changed so much in the last 25 years that I've been in it, that really you don't need to necessarily be in a specific place. You need good bandwidth and great coffee. So we've got plenty of that out here in Canyon City. So I think, the first thing for me was about 2.5 years ago when you and I started working together, Matthias, and a couple of other people joined in, and we said, hey, there's already several remote tech people here. Let's start a co-working facility and see how many of them we can find.
Yeah, that's right, and I think it was surprising to discover how many of them there actually were. Now, so it's easy to look at what we've got now, and we see the co-working space, we see the people who've come together, we see the tech sector partnership. But what are some of the battles we've had to fight on the way from that first job offer and the first idea of maybe getting some of these techies together to where we are?
Yeah, so when we opened up the co-working space, I think we had a co-working common area, but we had like 23 or 24 small suites, like 12 by 12 suites, and we filled those up pretty quickly, and we've kept them full and had a waiting list ever since. So we've had good success there, but I think one of the challenges was, we listened to maybe some people in other rural areas that said kind of find the theme or find the heritage of your area and see if it's something you can build on. And I don't think we found that yet. I think everybody in the 24 suites all have completely different kinds of tech businesses and tech focus. So that was one interesting thing. The other was, even for those of us in tech, I think it took us a while for even us to see that we could do, virtualized, highly distributed tech jobs successfully and kind of turn that into a thing. So changing kind of our own culture and then the culture within the community. I remember some of the first reactions of people, thinking it was funny that we'd be able to do tech stuff here. And that changed pretty quickly, maybe over 6 to 9 months. But I think cultural changes are always harder than anything else.
I think, Brad, to your point about the offices that kind of got rented in the group of people that are part of the tech starters in Fremont, for example, and also Salida, I think what we get a lot about, what's so unique about what you're doing in Fremont, what the upper arc tech sector is about, what FEDC TechStart's about, et cetera, is that, and we mentioned this briefly in our Q2 meeting, is that we're industry agnostic, but there's an eye to technology. And I think perhaps that's what's kind of spurring the growth is the sky's the limit kind of with this group we have going, where we've got people from every single different industry you can think of, from biosensors to, you know, feedback, to people like Braver, you know, to people like me, blockchain, to people like Matthias, and people like Ian, and those types of businesses where there's a heavy concentration in technology. However, it's industry agnostic, and that kind of seems to be the melting pot of the bond that this group has. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think it was really surprising to me that everybody was so different. You were going through the list, and I was thinking of Luke Jabernick, PhD, who focuses on river science stuff with Arduino and drones and, you know, big data in the Amazon cloud. Just things that we really were not expecting to find in such a rural context. So totally agree.
That's very true. So I'm curious, Brad, was there a moment kind of after the smiles, the laughs, maybe the naysayers sometimes, was there a moment that you can remember when you kind of saw the tide start to shift on the culture?
That's a really good question. I remember a couple of key moments, getting some of the local community leaders to walk upstairs and tour the co-working facility. And you could really see, once they could see people actually doing the work, you know, because when you say distributed software tech people, you know, it's pretty nebulous. But when you walk into a building and you see offices filled with people, and you can, you know, they can each explain what they're doing, it's a lot more tangible. And I just remember walking through a bunch of community leaders, giving them the first tour of TechStart, and it just clicked. And I think the cool thing I saw there was, you know, it went from skepticism to pride. They were very proud that we had kind of this demographic in our community. So that was one of them, Matthias. And then the other one, I think, was when we were awarded the PTEC grant for our high school. And PTEC is a grant where our high school students get 2 years of free college. And out of 190-ish school districts in Colorado State, there had been 3 awarded. We won the 4th, and we won the only rural PTEC grant out of all of the states participating in the PTEC program. So I think that was such an unexpected win that helped people understand our small size, you know, things that had been seen as negatives and challenges were actually positives. Our small size allowed us to build something completely different for a tech internship program for our students. And it really wasn't a disadvantage. It allowed us to do like unique one-on-one training, like PhD river scientists can work with a high school class, right? Something you can't necessarily get in a big city environment. So I think we've had a couple of key milestones that have really helped the local community change the way they look, and then come full circle and be extremely supportive in helping us to build this.
Also, Brad, you know, I believe Linda, who is involved a little bit with Pueblo Community College, I believe, she was saying that we're the furthest west and only Western PTEC awarded community. Is that correct?
Probably, yeah. Linda stays pretty in touch with that program. You know, and the PTEC program had historically been awarded in larger cities where there were larger tech companies that could do the internships for the high school students. So our proposal was totally different. We didn't have one big company. We had a bunch of very small companies or individual workers, but all in one building under the TechStart umbrella, right? So that was just a completely different way of looking at how to do the program.
Yeah, and Brad, I know you've talked about this too, but for those who aren't familiar, one of the big differences is simply the hands-on nature of these internship programs. And so instead of these students sitting in a classroom going through some kind of program from corporate, they're actually getting field experience and hands-on close interaction with people who are doing the day-to-day work.
Yeah, so as Ashley said, you know, pretty much everybody in our co-working facility and then throughout the whole region, there's such a variety of different kinds of tech companies that we're in, and then just different, different roles, right? Even if you say people are coders, there's such a range of, what languages they code in, even if they code in the same language, what's their background, what are they using, what are they coding for, right? So instead of taking a room full of interns and having them go through kind of the same standard, coding program, right? They're sitting down working with a developer who's creating an online learning system for GED math prep, right? Or they're going with a PhD river scientist out to a river that's the site of one of the largest fires in Colorado State, and they're working on that watershed recovery with Arduino-based water sensors and drones, right? Taking live data sampling. So instead of just playing with technology in a lab, they're getting a chance to build the stuff and take it out into a real-world context and see how it works. And I didn't have anything like that when I was in high school. I think that's an amazing opportunity for our kids. Now, sitting in a room, big room with, going through the same coding program, that's a great opportunity too. And when we get to the right size or we get the right resources, we may look at implementing those types of programs. But right now we have a lot of very dedicated and generous small businesses that want to volunteer their time to train kids on, their particular tech discipline.
Well, and I think if I just interject real quick, I think, Brad, that is one of the most unique things about this group of entrepreneurs, reinvesting in the community. It's one thing to academically bring a group of students together in a classroom, teach them some coding skills, etc., right? You set them down one specific track, but what we're doing here is offering real world experience, and there are very few programs out there in the country today that will actually allow these kids the ability to say, okay, we did the statistics, the statistician put down the calculators and said, okay, let's go look and see and apply this to the real world. Take the big data and go take a random sample. And I think that is the most unique thing about our program. I mean, how many people just working in data science or big data, for example, even have an opportunity to do that? I mean, there's so few times where when you look at computer science or anything in programming where you actually get to see the products work in the field. So it really is a one-of-a-kind opportunity. I've searched and searched for a program like this that's comparable, and there just is. I've come up short.
Yeah, and I think time and time again we've heard too, the technical skills are one thing, and you find the kids that have the technical aptitude and you can put them through a training program, but the soft skills, how to work as a team, how to understand how technology supports a business objective, right? Those are all things that are really hard for people to learn outside of actually just working in the environment. So it's a really holistic program. Yeah, so if I'm an intern, I'm sitting down with Matthias on the phone here, and he's talking to a customer outlining the objectives. You don't just want custom software developed. What is the business problem that you're trying to solve? And sitting next to Matthias as he works with the customer and asks the right questions and explores what are the business goals? And then he goes back with his team and writes up a design specification, how to help the team achieve those goals with technology. That's something that you don't get from an online video or reading a book. You just have to do it, and you have to see people who are really adept at doing it, and those are the best people to learn from.
Yeah, I think Brad, you touched on something very important earlier too. You mentioned the level of generosity in this group, and I think when you're talking about soft skills, I think that's another kind of X factor that is of this group here. Is there's a high level of generosity. And there's something about, I think maybe about rural communities, maybe about the Upper Arkansas region, but we've seen a lot of generosity with people working with other people, and being able to be in a tech environment where that's such a high value, I think is an incredible opportunity.
Yeah, and I can't speak to all rural communities. There's a lot of rural incubation going on around the country, but I know in our area, in our region, the people who have kind of come together on this project, they could live anywhere in the country, big city, small city, they could live globally and be successful. And a lot of them have already had a lot of personal, financial success, and they are choosing to live in a rural context for a wide variety of reasons. But what the theme we've seen is they love giving back. They missed being a part of a community when they were in a larger city. They love being a part of a community. They love giving back, passing on those skills. A lot of them have just come to a point in their life where their own success is based on seeing their neighbors succeed and their neighbors' kids be able to be successful. And I think it's an amazing thing. I have yet to have somebody ask me why, what's this program going to do for my personal business? I mean, you guys see it all the time at the meetings. We have people join and they're like, hey, when can I get an intern to start training them?
Right.
Which, it's going to take time away from their business, and they're a small business entrepreneurial environment. And it's like the first thing that they want to do is how can they jump in and connect and help grow a healthier, more prosperous community. And I love that.
I definitely think that's true about this group. It's probably the most, I want to say it's a group of people that have going concern for each other, for the businesses, and for the community, and it really is unique. It's watching everybody work together, and it just even if one company falls short in one area, there is somebody in this group that reaches out, and there's an intern that steps up. I mean, just at the other meeting, there was an intern that came and asked me if he could help start editing the podcast. Just ready to help, ready to fly with it, right?
Yeah.
I was like, so he thought I edited them. I said, I don't edit them. Yeah, lovely Ian edits them. He just deals with us. And so this community, this group is just really a group of people that want to give back and just want to see this grow. And that is so unique. It really is.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, and I think, I remember my tech career in larger towns, much larger towns. And I think at heart, so many of the people that I worked with really wanted to do that. They wanted to help. They wanted to, apprentice and intern, and they wanted to help other people grow in their career. But maybe the pressure to pay their mortgage or the pressure with a 2-hour commute, right? There's a lot of demands on your time and energy and resources when you're in a larger metro environment. So maybe it's not all that unique to this group. Maybe it's some latent, desire within most of us that's just easier to realize in this kind of setting. So, and I think that's a good mystery to explore, right? Just to see how transformational, this kind of work environment could be for anybody.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point, Brad.
I mean, I'll tell you, it sounds kind of silly, but our biggest worry was there was no Starbucks or Whole Foods when we moved here, and how would we survive? We had to drive like 45 minutes to go to the big city to find natural grocers or something. And what we found instead was the nourishment that we got by being able to plug into a community and, live in a transformational outdoor, lifestyle, not spend 2 hours a day commuting. Those things were far more valuable. And now we do have a Starbucks. So, we win on both sides.
Right. I think what you're seeing is, to your point, is in a broader sense, is a group of people choosing a different way of going after their passion. And, technology is so competitive, right? We've all worked the 120-hour day in 24 hours. We've all done the, 5 years straight with no vacation type situation. And we do it because we're technologists. We do it because we love it, right? Yeah. But on the other spectrum of it, what I think this group is allowing us to do in this movement that we're seeing, and I think that we're seeing is we're choosing not to burn ourselves the same way that we used to, and we've chosen a different way to kind of apply ourselves. And I say we because I'm one of these remote workers, but I think in large part, Brad, you can relate to that. Matthias, you can as well. Is we've all decided that we could go be a stranger in some larger city, but we can contribute a verse here and feel a connection that we lost, kind of in the mill. And I think maybe that's kind of what's reviving us, right? And allowing us to kind of keep the momentum going, because this group has grown so organically and with not much advertising, not much national attention, but on the other side, our entrepreneurs have gone and done amazing things, and it's because this connection is so strong, right? And these people have chosen they want to be here. They're not here. They're here because they believe in a better lifestyle. And I think Warren's calling that out because this is kind of a little small microcosm of movement where people said, no, we're not just going to breeze by our neighbors and not know them. We're going to stop and be connected, right? And I think we benefit from that together.
Yeah, I think the majority of people living in a large city do not feel plugged in and do not feel like they have any impact. They don't feel like they can go to a city council meeting and change the shape of the community that they live in. And in a smaller, more rural environment, you can go run for city council, right? There's just a lot more opportunity to be impactful. And just, you made me think of something, Ashley, that I'm just really passionate about. I think when we first started doing this rural economic development, there's just this kind of sense that, rural communities are looking for a handout and please send us your industries that no one else wants in the big city. And we start to look around, we're like, it's like 35 to 50% cheaper to live here. It's a 1-hour drive back to the larger cities. We have high-speed bandwidth. We have very, very affordable buildings, call center assets, co-working facilities. We are building a tech-ready labor force from the high school and the community college. And we've got a bunch of seasoned tech people who have already found it kind of on their own. To me, that sounds like a strategic asset to build for someone else's business, right? If you can build a labor force, a talented labor force that's 35% cheaper, that's in the same state, same time zone, hour away from your corporate office, that's not a group of people needing a handout. That's a strategic asset that other people have not figured out how to put together. So that's super exciting for me. Colorado has been leading the country in tech for a long time. And how do you continue to lead there? You can't pay everybody $300K salaries to live in Boulder. You need secondary, lower paying jobs to support those companies. And we can do that in state in some beautiful rural regions in the mountain area that are a 2-hour drive, right? Which is just a long commute in the Bay Area, right? So that's super exciting to me, is how do we put that together and be one big ecosystem statewide with different centers of excellence. And the rural ones can be very low turnover, very low cost of labor. They just have a lot to offer from a strategic perspective.
That's right. And we shouldn't forget to associate there's monetary value with the ability to ride your bike to work or to go mountain climbing on the weekends. Just the ability to recharge creative juices very quickly in this type of environment.
Yeah, I think I read an article that said, when men are over the age of 40, they're more productive if they only work 4 days a week. And I've been trying to find a company to give me that deal, and no one will.
How's it going?
But if I still have to work 5 days a week, I love working. I was so burnt out on tech when I left the Bay Area. I thought, hey, tech's not for me anymore. But the truth is, I love what I do. I love tech. I just needed the right kind of, I don't know if work-life balance really speaks to it properly. But I needed stuff that was more purpose-oriented, and where I can ride my bike to work, and where I can take the day off if I want to, because my financial pressures are less, where I can have an immediate impact on the lives of some high school interns. When I'm living that, it feels like I can work 6-7 days a week. It's a completely different kind of thing.
Yeah. So we've talked a lot about some of the early beginnings, some of your journey here as well. But I'm curious. We've had a lot of incredible things happen, even in the last, say, 6 months or so. Brad, I'm curious if you'd want to highlight some of those wins that we've had. especially recently?
Yeah, so we got recognition by the state of Colorado through the Office of Economic Development and International Trade, Colorado Workforce Development Center. We are now recognized as the state's second technology sector. So the first is Denver and the third is Boulder, and the second is very rural Colorado out in the upper Arkansas River area.
Yay!
And, yay, yeah, and the idea is not to compete with those larger cities. The idea is build a blueprint where tech and innovation sector businesses help with, economic development in rural communities. So it's finding the right size, the right fit, the right types of companies, the right business models to revitalize the small towns up along the Arkansas River corridor. And we're having great success with that and great fun. And I think just when we say that, when we go to the larger cities and we go to trade shows and we say upper architect sector and we're the second in the state, I think just that makes people think completely differently about what's possible today in a rural context. So we had that win. We had the PTEC grant, so fourth in the state. And I think this year we're targeting 49 students from our high school to be in that. So if you think about 49 students in a rural environment being able to get 2 years of free college, that's life-changing for 49 families, right? So we had that. We had, one of our companies bought by a very, very large software company. That was a great win. We had one of our companies picked up by the HAX Accelerator out of China. So that's Brock.
Which is amazing.
Called Braver. And he's got a patented sensor that helps people with bruxism. So he and his team are actually out in China as we speak for 4 months working on, they're getting kind of their MBA in manufacturing, so to speak. We had Dr. Luke Javernick set up his watershed restoration nonprofit called River Science. He is a European Union award-winning PhD, and to have him here with his heart to plug in and contribute to the community, we've just had so many wins. I think this year one of the big game changers was the Unbridled company coming down from Denver to start to make an investment in our historical buildings on Main Street. Their mission statement is restoring people and places, and they love this town, and they just have a heart to restore like the historic St. Cloud Hotel. And they totally buy the vision of co-working and remote tech workers. They have a lot of people working up in the Denver area, and they pay really well. They treat their employees really well, but Denver is so expensive. They have a lot of people that just can't, afford a great lifestyle living right up in the heart of Denver. So having a company of that size make an investment down here is huge. What else did we do this year, Matthias? We went up to the Catalyst campus for Space Symposium. Yeah. Go ahead, Leslie.
And with Second 61 came out with their call center, right?
That's right. We had Second 61 launch a outsourced call center for the Army, so they do Tier 1 technical support, and that required prospects to have A+ certification and I think a secret level clearance, and I think some of them have Net Plus, right? So it's a small call center right now, but actually, the people who put that together, and Chris Cohen leading that project, getting the building, getting the network set up, getting the right type of people in and trained, getting the approval to do the project from here. Basically, all of the major obstacles have been overcome, and now we can focus on growing that call center to a larger size. And then we can focus on doing more distributed call centers like that throughout the other small towns. So, instead of having one big call center with 1,000 people, if you have 10 small call centers with 100 people, if any one of them goes down or offline or whatever, right, you have a resiliency that is yet again another strategic asset, right? So, as we start to build this out, we have so much value that we can offer back to like the I-25 corridor up through Colorado, through the business district.
Yeah, that's right. And I think it's important to note that we're kind of entering this new phase where we started with this kind of conceptual idea of what this might look like, and we're actually being able to build out some of these models of like, here's a business that can be replicated with what is possible in rural tech.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think the $1 million question for you, Brad, is I got involved with the partnership probably just over a year ago, right? And I think just in a year, the tone of the projects we're working on is much different. I think the discussions that we're having have grown quite a bit. But my question for you is, now that this vision is kind of coming to life a little bit, how do you feel about it when you talk about it?
So we did this event last year at the Florence High School called Dream Big, and it's sponsored, I believe, through the governor's office. And basically, it was a mini trade show, a STEM-based trade show for the high school students. And 220 of them came in on their day off. And the NSA had a booth, Ball Engineering had a booth. There was a whole little expo booth area. There were 3D printing teams. There were professional pilots. There was a inflatable planetarium. The students could come in and talk to professionals in the STEM field that the students could be in those jobs 5 to 10 years from now. So they basically got to meet their future selves, and that was a game changer for many students. And that event was called Dream Big. And what we started saying was, had we known like a year or two ago that we could have accomplished this, we should, dream bigger, right? So many amazing things have happened over the last year or two. And I think we really have started to find our way. We were first trying to prove whether or not we could do anything. Is there anything here? And as we've moved forward, I think there's a much clearer vision shaping itself for what's possible in a rural context. And it's not a handout. It's being a strategic asset for larger companies in the I-25 tech corridor and around the state and around the country. And it's about providing a community environment for entrepreneurs to come build a startup and be a successful tech entrepreneur without giving up their health and their life, right? It's about being able to use your talents to pour back into a community to really have an impact, a beneficial impact on the lives of people around you. And it's stuff that has come to fruition just as we've moved forward. And I think that's what's really exciting, is that we didn't start off with a really great plan or any plan. We just kind of started doing it, and this plan has emerged, and it feels very organic, and it feels very sustainable, and it feels like it has a lot of headroom to continue growing. And not to try to make rural Colorado into Denver or Colorado Springs, but to find out what is the best rural Colorado can be. How can we contribute to helping this place find its own excellence and its own voice, right? And its own destiny and purpose. And it's just really exciting to be a part of it.
I couldn't have put it better myself.
You're getting me all choked up, you guys.
Well, that's the goal.
I'm thinking of the ripple effect on other rural communities, because as a whole, I see a lot of people kind of hanging their heads about, from a rural community, what's the potential here? But imagine the shift that could happen with more rural communities picking up on what is unique to them, what's their own unique kind of destiny, and how can they incorporate tech into what they're doing. And just to see people even around here lift their heads up a little higher because of what's happening. It's amazing to see.
Yeah. The rural communities are all so different. If you just look at Colorado, from mountain towns to river towns to like high desert to out in the eastern part of Colorado where it's more agricultural focused. And you don't need a lot of tech income to economically revitalize those communities. If you need 100, 150, 200 people, to really make a noticeable impact, you can find 200 people who want to live in an agricultural community and do tech. You can find 200 people who want to live near a river or out by the great sand dunes. That's not a lot of people, to to pull out of San Francisco or Austin or San Jose, people who are just really generally dissatisfied with their quality of life, or they're just ready for a change. They can contribute to those rural areas and then contribute back to the larger metro areas. Like, I think we have a future in helping Colorado Springs. We have a strategic asset to their business plan, right? Yeah.
And I think you couldn't have put it better, Brad. Specifically, and I just want to hone in on this one more time. I really believe it needs to be called out. What this program is doing and how it's grown organically, we're not forcing any one business or any one entrepreneur, any one intern. We're not forcing any group of people down any certain track. And I think that is what is so interesting in how you build something for sustainability. We're not saying everybody go learn Java coding, or we're not saying everybody learn data science. We're not saying everybody become a statistician. We're not telling anybody to be any one thing. And I think that is how this will sustain itself. And I think you've proven that. And I say we've all proven it, but we've seen that growth in 2 years, just in the amount of the students coming in to work on different projects. We're not, it's not forcing someone to be any one thing. It's embracing culture as it is today and saying, how do you achieve that life-work balance in a really different world? We have a digital world and we have a real world. And I think this is one of the few innovation technology sectors that actually marries those two really difficult subjects, because we're not saying, hey, go learn how to program an app, or be completely mobile, or we're not even focused so much on connectivity. It's not even really that much of an issue. What do you think when you take that important step back? We crossed that hurdle. At least through this region, I think we crossed it about, on and off through all the areas. I want to say we really crossed it, probably for 6 months for all of the 5 regions to kind of be where they need to be functionality-wise. But also, and there's always room to power up and grow more from there. But the thing is that nothing is forced down any one track. And I think that's so important to call out, and what has been incubated here.
Yeah, we can even take that one step further in that. We didn't sit down one day and draw out a list of these are the 24 things that we're going to have done at the end of 2 years. We had some kind of pictures of what we wanted to see, but there was a little bit of push, and then there was a lot of just watching some of these things emerge, and as we see opportunity to come on board and carry them through to fruition. And it's honestly, it's been incredible to watch.
It really has. It's like watching a garden grow. We've planted seeds, and we went through a percolation period where I believe that people came up and decided who they were going to be. We didn't just get here because of one person's vision. We got here because everybody came and brought something to the table. And I remember when I went to the first meeting for the upper ARC tech sector, there's a lot of people that worked in technology down a specific track. And now they've come back and they've started a second or third company just doing something completely different, applying skills that they used in one career to another one, in doing something totally different. And I think that's what we've seen is we've even kind of motivated just the small group of people that we do have here to repurpose their skills, which has been really awesome to watch. Just the amount of growth in Dr. Luke and Brad and Matthias, Ian, I can name them all, Gregory, what Alan with the South by Southwest show, or not show, but conference, watching how everybody's kind of repurposed and retooled their skills to kind of refine what they're doing to make sure that they are giving back to the community. It's kind of cool. It's like all these entrepreneurs got in this room with this TechStart, with the Upper Technology Partnership, I can speak for myself and Wendell. We all got in this room with you guys and kind of went pen to paper and said, okay, who do we want to be and what can we do to make this better? And some amazing businesses have popped up out of it. And I think that's wonderful, right?
Yeah.
So it wasn't just, it also wasn't just this remote movement. It was people repurposing their skills to grow this and keep it, going up and expanding, which I think, if I look at everybody, they've all gone further in their career. They've gotten accolades in their industries and been published, et cetera, just in such a short time. I mean, they've really brought their game.
Yeah, it's interesting because if you there's a lot of super talented people in this region. Really surprisingly, and we keep meeting them because we haven't done a lot of advertising, and we'll find out somebody was just a few streets over, a few buildings over in the next town over, and hadn't heard of us, and we hadn't heard of them, and they're super, super good at what they do. So what happens when you get a bunch of really talented people in a room together who now have free time, right? They're not commuting 2 hours a day, hour and a half a day, traveling 75%. Magical stuff happens, right? And just people's desire to pass down, the wisdom that they've picked up in their career because they see a project that has great potential or a person that has great potential, and they can just, help carry them or help, pull them along to the next phase. And I think that's just a really beautiful thing to see.
It's the best of startup culture I think I've ever had the pleasure of being a part of. It beats out Silicon Valley all day long.
Well, the mountain biking's better, that's for
sure. Here's a question for you, Brad, because there's a couple of different people who might be listening here. There may be entrepreneurs who want to move from a big city into a more rural community. There might be other businesses who are looking for places to maybe find lower cost of living for their team, or maybe there's even one of the things I keep thinking about is other rural communities who want to replicate this. I think you more than anybody you've seen all the moving pieces of this thing as it's come together. I'm curious what you would say to those people. And you can pick one, you can pick all of them.
Yeah, so many. Well, so my tech career kind of started in the very early 90s. And I think at that time, tech businesses had to be in a certain place, and you'd have customers come in and you'd show them, your data center and hardware, your own hardware with flashing red lights and
your tape drive.
Yeah, your tape drive. Wow. And these days, I think if you showed investors that you actually bought hardware with their money, they'd say, haven't you heard of the cloud, right? And why aren't you looking for the best? You don't need labor in a specific place. For some jobs, you need labor in a specific place, or you want them to be next to a university or next to a military base or something, or next to a specific hardware manufacturer. But for so many of the jobs, you'd say technology has advanced to the point you should be looking for the best labor regardless of location. And then it's your responsibility as a business leader to manage that team, whether it's a team in one office or it's a team that's very highly distributed. Find the best resources at the best price to build that company, right? So it's open door. Find the best people in the country or the world, right? And build that company. So that's thing one. The world has changed. You don't need to be in a specific place. Think distributed. The other is 90% of startups will fail, or depends on what stage they're in and what numbers you look at, but they all fail for different reasons. But one thing they all had in common typically is that they all ran out of money, right? So if you can extend your runway by 10, 15, 20, 50%, right? What does that do to the potential viability of your company? So if you're someone who can move into a more remote context, or you can consider hiring somebody in a more remote context, I mean, we see this all day long. People are hiring developers who are offshore, who are in, Eastern Europe, and they find somebody really good and they use them over and over and over because, right, they pay them less, they're getting top quality talent. That person can have a very good lifestyle for less pay. Of course, you're going to take advantage of that. And what we're saying is you don't have to go overseas to do that. We're developing that, and a lot of it already exists in rural America, right? So take advantage of that. And if you need help, I think that's one of the most important things that we can do with this template and this blueprint that we're trying to build through these sector partnerships is, somebody who's entrepreneurial and starting a business, they don't have time to go out and build the rural infrastructure, right? We need to build that for them and make it easy for them to plug in. So if they're looking for a developer, they're looking for a tier 1 call center, that's the stuff that we're building today, right? So as we continue to advance that and plug in with other rural communities that are doing that, we need to get that message out to the people in the larger environments. We have an asset to help you strategically grow your company, right? To give you 20% more runway against your competitors or against the industry itself, against whatever friction you're fighting against, we can help you fight faster, better, longer. Boy, how much time do I have, Matthias? I can talk all night about that, but we've had a ton of learning. I think I'll close on this point for that topic. When we started this, we said, hey, we're cheap. That was like our number one value prop. It's cheaper to live here, right? And I got like rebuked by some people, some friends in the Seattle area and the Portland area, and they said, man, you're missing it. It's not your lower cost. They said, if you're running a tech company in a big city, unless you're Google, Microsoft, Amazon, if you're not in the big 5 or the big 10, good luck hiring anybody, right? Because you're competing for the same labor as those gigantic companies that are growing really, really fast. They said, your value prop is, we can't hire right now. So if you can provide some of those roles for us, at a cheaper cost, then we have more budget to hire, in a big city. When we do need to hire in a major metropolitan area, we've got additional budget to do that, to hire the people that we do need here, we can hire here. And the people who don't need to live here, can live anywhere, right? So they said it's not a cost thing, it's not a cheap thing. They said if we can't hire for those positions, we can't grow our companies, right? We're gonna lose to a competitor. We're not going to hit our growth numbers. So it's not about the cost of labor. It's about the strategic impact of the cost of labor and being able to get some of those resources outside of the hottest, most competitive labor markets. So I think that was a shift in thinking for us. Cheap is not a strategic value prop, right?
Right.
Yeah.
No, and to that point, Brad, this is what I was going to say earlier. It came back to me, which is the good news. So the notion, and this is an antiquated way of thinking, right? But it would be foolish not to mention it, right? Tech in a small town, in a more rural area, is a dirty word, right? Let's face it, it just is. Why? Some will say the education hasn't been there in the past. Some will say it is, they're just not as exposed to technology. Bringing tech into a rural community has been probably one of the coolest things I've ever been involved in my life. I'm sure you each have your own kind of take on that. But there's also a friction in the tech industry where they ask you, hey, where are you working from, right? And, 10 years ago, or maybe 7 years ago, I'd say, oh, I'm working from Salida. Where's that? I said, I'm on a river talking to you. And people are like, oh, wow, that's amazing. But you live in a small town. You're supposed to be in California, or you're supposed to be here, you're supposed to be there, in some of these hubs that we've seen built around the country, around the bigger companies. And so a small town to the tech industry was almost a dirty word to them, where I, maybe wasn't competitive enough, maybe wasn't educated enough. What do you think has happened between that gap in the last, 8 months? I think it's treated much differently, and I've got my own thoughts on it, but I'm curious to think what you've seen. Is the community afraid of the word tech, or are we seeing a wider spread adoption?
So I think the community, you know, there are people who live here who don't want to live in Breckenridge or Boulder, and you say tech and they think that the goal is to turn this community into one of those other communities. And it's not. It's to first of all, the tech people are already here. We walk among you, right?
Right.
So, you know, we're already here.
We do.
Nothing bad. We didn't break the community, right? It's the people in tech who live here are the people who wanted this kind of community and this kind of lifestyle. And they're really coming here and they want to apply their skills and their financial resources and their human resources to make this place the best place that it can be. So I think the first concern locally was, first of all, you'll never even do it. And then if you do it, please don't do it, because we don't want you to raise the housing prices and turn it into another type of community. But I mean, anytime you bring new jobs in, higher paying jobs, you're going to have some financial adjustment. And one of the things that we're really focusing on is, we don't want people to get left behind. The goal isn't just to bring in very high six-figure salaries. The call center that you talked about is starting with 35 to 40K a year jobs for students right out of high school and community college. Those are very good paying jobs for those students for this area. It doesn't force the housing prices to go way up in the same way that somebody coming down from Denver with $1 million liquid cash from selling their house, right? So we need both, though. We need more seasoned people who have the experience to come down and be a part of the tech community, and then we need to create the entry-level jobs that'll help grow the community slower and more organically and naturally. And we need both.
So they
and
move
the
in
other thing,
parallel, right?
Yeah, they do. And a lot of these rural areas have been depressed for 2, 3, 4 decades. They've had many industries try to come in and fail, and they don't just have lower cost of living. In some instances, they have very artificially lower cost of housing, lower cost of living. So anything you do is going to start to raise the housing prices. Is going to start to raise the cost of living. So you can't just not do anything, because that means no prosperity and no jobs, right? But you have to do it in kind of a thoughtful, managed way. And I think across the tech environment, you need all of those different kinds of jobs across different skill sets and different economic spectra. So that's an area where we've tried to be more thoughtful and work with the economic development groups, the county, the county leadership, the city leadership, the school district. We have realtors involved in this program. We've got other people working through state agencies on affordable housing initiatives. It really is kind of a holistic look at the ecosystem. It's not just bringing in people.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
No, that's really interesting. It's kind of coming from a grassroots approach from the bottom up in the community, which is really neat. And I always look at, when I look at a community and you throw around a lot of tech terms, a lot of people get scared, and it's really wonderful to see here is that they're not afraid of the growth that the technology kind of opportunities exist that they can bring, right?
Yeah.
Cool, good. Well, Brad, thanks so much for taking us on this journey with you. I think it's incredible what's happening, and I really hope that this inspires other people to see what they can do in their own community. Brad, I'm curious if you've got any kind of closing comments for us as we wrap this up.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you again for getting me on the podcast and letting me ramble. I appreciate you guys and just giving me a chance to have a voice here. But I think what we touched on earlier when we said if we'd have done anything different, we should have dreamt bigger. With the stuff that we've accomplished and the stuff that we're looking at doing over the next year, that's really kind of the question: is our vision big enough? I think for me, it's been an experience of don't believe that you can't change the world or be a part of changing the world and making it a better place. You can. I've gotten the opportunity to do that, and I've gotten the opportunity to do that with a lot of my closest friends, who live out here. And I think what we've seen is, for this project, there's a chance for rural America to be what it always could have been, which is, the biggest strategic asset for the country. There's a lot of really innovative, hardworking people between the left and the right coasts, and technology can enable them as a powerful, powerful workforce, and not look to, how do we throw money at them, or that they're looking for a handout. There's some amazing, amazing people here who can be technology enabled to be a part of the greater good. So, I just think that, just remember, at one point there was a very first Starbucks and a very first Whole Foods and the very first Uber ride. And there may not be a lot of people doing rural economic development with tech right now, but it just feels like something that is about to become a trend. And I'm excited to see how it changes. It changes kind of the face of the country over the next 10 or 20 years. So great stuff. Very happy to be a part of it.
Thanks for listening to the TechStart podcast. Find out more at techstart.fremontedc.com.